Thank you for joining IAB There.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Behrens, the editor-in-chief here at the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Welcome to IAB There, our regular streaming show where we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. We have released today our new impact study. Let me give you a little bit of context. About a year ago, when things were very dire indeed, when we were going indoors, quarantining, when it was an extraordinarily tumultuous time, hard for publishers to know what advertisers were doing, hard for anybody to understand how messaging was changing, how spend was changing. We started to go out into the field for a series of impact studies tracing how marketers and agencies were adjusting spend in the light of the coronavirus pandemic, which has been with us now for over a year. The ninth of these studies has just been released. You can find it on our website at iab.com. We released it about an hour ago. And in a moment, I'm going to bring Sue Hogan, who's our SVP of Research and Analytics, onto the stream. We're going to talk about a selection of the results, what they mean. There's a lot of goodies that are quite interesting around digital video, which is particularly worthwhile because we have our New Fronts event, which is coming up May 3rd to May 6th. You see the little URL crawling down below. You can go to iab.com/newfronts. I'll talk about this at the end as well. But right now, let's bring Sue Hogan into the stream. Sue Hogan, welcome back.
Hey there,
Brad. IAB There. Good to see you.
Good to see
thanks
you
for coming. Yes, it's only been the 55th meeting we've had together today, but the first one we've had in front of everyone. So we're going to dig in. Let's just start, I think, pull up the first slide and use that to give a little bit of context. Let me tell you what I'm seeing. So this is the frequency of revisiting media budgets dropped in the first quarter of this year. Now, just to frame this up, when it says November of 2020 on the left and March 2021 on the right, what this means is in November, in our last impact study, we said, well, how are you thinking about 2021? And then in our study that we've released today, we're asking the same question. So that's two different vantage points on how the buy side is thinking about 2021 as opposed to where spend was in 2020 versus now. Is that an accurate summary of what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's dead on. I think important probably to note that when we asked, certainly this time, we said, how many of you are confident in your budgets? That was our first question. And 89% felt very comfortable in their budgets, like top two box. So the good news is that the answers then that follow are stable, right? So what they're telling us here is that back in November, when they were planning their 2021 budgets, 75% of them had said, I really feel like we're going to be revisiting our budgets as we have been in the rest of 2020 on a much more frequent basis, reallocating where needed. And now asked in, the end of March, they say, no, many of them have switched over. In fact, 56% reported that they are going to be looking at their budgets in that kind of a frequency. So if you'll see the bright red there, it's 29% who are annual now versus 6% back in November. That is a sure sign of optimism and stability.
Right. And I think you were aggregating those numbers, but if we look at the 29% of people on the left-hand side who were looking monthly at their budgets, like, are we doing the right thing? Are we planning correctly? Versus that's declined by almost half to 15%. So marketers and agencies are able to make longer term plans now because some of the chaos in our environment has receded. And if we think back to a year ago we were newly indoors, newly quarantined. We were not yet at the polarization around the election, but certainly the kind of high thrum of polarization as a culture. A lot of things were making it hard for people to make long-term plans. Things seem to have calmed down considerably. Let's go to the next slide. This one is a little hard to interpret, so I'm going to lean on you. but this is the big news again, particularly compelling as we are gearing up for the new fronts starting on May 3rd. Is the digital video is the big winner. So walk us through winners and losers, or maybe just winners on this chart.
Sure, I or both. I think I have to do both. I love this chart. I know that it's a lot to look at, but I love this chart. And the reason I do is because if you look at the deep gray color, back in November, 13% of the buyers who took the study said that they were going to be putting part of their total budget share, 13% was going to be digital video. And if you look at now, that March 2021 number, you're looking at 20%. That swing is almost identical to the swing that you see coming out of the second one down, which is paid search at 16 and 13 respectively, from November to March. And then again, at the very bottom, you see a swing from 14 to 10 in March, where that is all traditional media except for television. Television and all other video is up for 2021.
Right, and so yes, yeah, and a nice 3% increase for linear television, which I think is also possibly attributable to the return to production that's happened as more and more new programming is available on linear and, of course, on streaming. With a 7 percentage point, pardon me, not percent, 7 percentage point uptick for digital video, 3% for linear. This is, again, very good news for the video formats all up, to quote David Cohen, our CEO, but particularly good news for digital video. Let's go on to the next one. This is another one where I'm going to need some help interpreting it. There we go. So 79% of video buyers expect the buying cycle to shift from reserved to scatter. And so my question here is, let's zoom in a little bit on reserved. I think you're talking there about the kind of combination of the various marketplaces that are kicking off, right now. The traditional television upfronts, the new fronts that we've talked about a couple of times already, the podcast upfronts, which will follow hard upon. Is that what you're saying by reserve?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's really about buying right within the upfronts during that seasonal, very traditional TV spend buy kind of negotiation period. They're showing that, I believe, because we're looking at an increase in digital video period, and digital video can be sold much more fluidly, that the cycle of selling is opening up.
So rather than you got to make all your money during 1 week in the spring, we're going to be having a marketplace that's more ongoing.
Correct.
Correct. And then something that's
really been supported. I'm sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Go ahead, please. No, please.
I was just going to say that it's not surprising, because we've also been asking a lot of questions about, are you starting to see the need for an upfronts and a new fronts? Are you starting to see a time where you'd be able to buy everything altogether, if not just video? And we are seeing that dial start to move very quickly now into, like, within the next couple of years, a change in a more frequent, maybe smaller, quarterly kind of buying season.
And we're also seeing, we don't have those slides that we're talking about on IAB there today, but we are seeing a sense from the buy side of the marketplace that there will be a convergence of the traditional television upfronts and the new fronts over the course of around plus or minus, well, actually, 2 years plus. There's no minus. The answers that we saw in the data were that somewhere 2 years or slightly farther out, they're expecting more of a convergence, as opposed to having to go to a TV upfronts and then a new fronts and then something else, that there'll be kind of a one-stop shop. And that also, I think, correlates with a lot of the integration across different media from the different platforms that we have. So that's something that we have been tracking and something that we will continue to track. Um, One of the things that we've got this time, which go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think there's a slight difference between the buy side and the sell side on this, and that is there are certainly sellers who only sell digital, but there really aren't only traditional video so much anymore, right? Buyers are converging. And so while we do still have some buyers who are buying traditional only, we, for the most part, are seeing a convergence of those two on the agency side. And so it makes sense that within the next couple of years, we're going to see that converge.
And I also think it's worth pointing out that audiences don't tend to think of themselves as linear broadcast or streaming audiences. They just want to watch what they want to watch, and they want to find out where it is, and they want to get to it as quickly as they can. So our internal industry distinctions don't necessarily make sense to the people who are actually watching the content. Let's go on to the next slide. One of the things that we always want to do, but that is quite challenging to do, is to get data by vertical, by industry, vertical industry category. Now, you'll see some of the verticals here. There are some big ones that are missing, and the reason for that is we didn't get a stable enough sample for things to be statistically significant. These are the ones where we did get that sample. So, Sue, I'm looking at this, and the one that pops out at me is pharma, up 49% year over year. Tell me what you're seeing.
So I think this is kind of interesting because the at-home lifestyle that we've all been kind of living in really shows up very clearly here. Anything that we needed to have in home during, 2020 was high sale. What this is showing is optimism for 2021. So whether it's pharmaceuticals or whether it's travel and tourism, which is the one that really excited me when I saw the 34%, the anticipation of people leaving home is being reflected in the ad spend now. And, Brad, you and I were talking about this a few days ago with $2 trillion coming back into the market or coming into the marketplace as stimulus packages. I think that is also helping to ignite this quite a bit. Brick and mortar, another really good story. This is something that's been taking a beating for a decade now, but we're seeing a 20% swing even in brick and mortar. So it's all really good news.
And I think just thinking about
looking at the ones that weren't, you're not looking at the ones that weren't stable. Really, everything is pretty much on the upswing. I just didn't share every single category of business, and we track like 26 of them this time. The majors, and they just were too small to report on.
I would love, in the world where we have enough time and infinite research resources, which is not the world that we live in, I'd love to be able to figure out sort of what's really happening with travel and tourism right now. We saw earlier in the pandemic a lot of shifting of spend around from flights to driving trips, for example. This 34% number, which is so electrifying on this chart for travel and tourism. This is companies letting folks know that, hey, if you are vaccinated, if you can make a plan for a summer trip, do it with us, please. But again, there's so much variety inside of travel and tourism that eventually I hope we can get a fuller picture of it. Let's move on to something that we've been talking about a great deal, to the next slide, which is about first-party data. Now, this connects to other things that we've been talking about for a year and a bit, which is the coming loss of third-party cookies. This is Google will stop supporting third-party cookies in January on its Chrome browser. Changes that are happening right now with the new iOS 14.5. I got my first notification today that asking, do I want to opt in or opt out? On letting an app track me across websites on my iPhone today. So we've been expecting it for next week, but things have started trickling out. This, what we're seeing is the buy side starting to invest more heavily in first-party data So walk us through what this slide means, and then let's talk about
Sure.
that after in the broader context.
So I think just for a little bit of a level set, I'll share that one question that we asked in this survey was how many buyers are actually investing in first party data and acquisition partnerships right now. So it's not just about a shift or a change, but can we right now draw a line in the sand and say, if we're going to benchmark this moving forward, how many of you are already investing in first party data? The answer was 64%. So 2/3 of buyers are investing in first party data. We also see that when it comes to data and acquisition partnerships, of that 64%, they're saying that there is an increase of 26% in their budget for that data and acquisition partnership. So it's a fair amount of money. I don't have a dollar amount for you, but 26% is nothing to sneeze at. It underscores really the growing buyer concern over that impending loss of cookies and other identifiers, as you just stated. I think the way to read this particular slide really, a lot of people know how to read these, but if you take a look at, for instance, the upper right-hand quadrant, you'll see that social platforms and placements is the highest. That means that the most number of buyers are putting money into social platforms and placements. But if you look far out to the right-hand side, you see IP data acquisition and partnerships. And that suggests that in that quadrant, because it's also very high, everything in that quadrant's high. So the number of people who are investing is high. The amount of money being invested is greatest for IP. For first party data, I said IP, for first party data and partnerships. So this is a story that is warming my heart because we know from State of Data, which was released back in February, that the industry absolutely has not been prepared for the loss of cookies and identifiers, but it seemed that they thought they were prepared. And I feel like this is showing that there is more of a lean in to investment and figuring it all out.
Yes, well, State of Data, which was in the field earlier and which came out at our ALM annual leadership meeting just last month, or although early last month, we saw a gap between confidence and competence. There was a higher degree of confidence that people were ready to embrace a world without third-party data than there was actual preparation. And so, golly, it's what I'm taking from this is we're seeing the buy side pivoting into that, leaning into that in order to get there, ahead of time as opposed to when it's too late. Now, the first party data conversation connects to our next slide. So if we can go to the next slide, this is about retail media. Retail media, not first party data, but a place where there's an extraordinary amount of information that the retail media networks have about their customers because they keep on coming back. And so, what I know from other data in the deck is that the percentage of folks who are investing in retail media is still relatively low, but the people who are investing, which is not trivial, are investing more and more. So walk us through what that means in terms of the year over year stuff we're seeing here, please.
Sure. It's funny. It's a growing area. It's been around for a long time, right? But it's a growing area, and it's growing because I believe of that first party data. It's an end to end loop. Your messaging within the retailer's environment. The retailer has content and product to buy. The consumer is able to transact, and then lo and behold, you're able to get some kind of an ROI out of it. So it's a really nice, a kind of closed circle. What we've seen from 2019 to 20 to 21 is roughly a 2 to 3 percentage point gain from year over year over year in the number who are investing in retail media. But while retail media has been around for a long time, it's also very nascent in the way that they are sharing data The tools that they have aren't quite what we would expect when we're on the buy and the buy side in particular, on things like viewability and brand safety. The CPMs are very high, and we're finding that the scale also, right, is going to be pretty tight because it's such a small closed loop with those retailers. So while we're seeing a small number, it's only 28% who are investing in retail media in 2021. The amount of their budget that they're investing looks pretty darn good, doesn't it?
And sort of two PSAs for our audience. First is that we will have a retail media panel at the New Fronts starting on May 3rd, as I've said. And also within the Programmatic and Data Center, we have a retail media committee, which is growing quickly. So this is a area that we're spending a lot of attention and effort on at the IAB. So stay tuned, much more to come. We have one more slide to share from the impact study, of which, of course, this is only a selection. So I do want to exhort everyone to go download the full study, where you'll find much more granular detail on a larger number of topics. We here at the IB have a profound commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have launched the Inclusion Institute, with SNAP as one of our founding partners. So we asked some questions about how spend is going and sort of morphing around DEI. So walk us through what we're seeing here, please, Sue.
Sure. And if we could go to the next slide. There is an increase in the number of buyers who are looking to place more advertising, both with minority-owned media as well as with minority-focused media, right? Targeted reach. So we're now seeing that there's 53% of buyers who are saying that they are going to invest more. In addition to that, if you look at these particular bars, you see the way that they are going to invest. Now, that does not mean it's not additive, right? So it's not a pie. So while we're seeing roughly in the mid 20% of each individual cohort getting an increase in budget for that particular cohort, we do see that women is a little bit higher than everybody else. I think it's important to note here that this is of the buyers who said that they are going to be increasing their budgets. So it's a tight number.
Okay. Well, Sue, before we wind up, you have a list that you're aggregating around minority-owned media. Tell us a little bit about the list and how people can get to be a part of it.
Gladly. Thank you. This came up in one of our calls with our members, and there was a frustration that everybody seems to be trying to put together a list, and it's very hard to put together a list of minority-owned media. There's also, what's the definition of minority-owned media? Are we talking about, Black, Hispanic, et cetera? Are we including women or not? We're looking at this as DEI, so it's women would be included because there's still an inequity. We are looking at LGBTQ. We're looking at all of the different cohorts that could potentially go in here. We put out a call to both the buy side and the sell side. We now have approximately 6,000 media companies who are included on this list, but we are now working on trying to vet that list and make sure indeed that they are minority-owned media, and if they are, what's the contact information for them? This is something that we're going to be, kind of banging the drum on loud and clear during upfronts, new fronts, and podcast upfronts, so that we can move forward as an entire industry and hopefully get some scale behind these cohorts that goes beyond just the way we normally buy targets right now and into getting the minority-owned businesses some of the love.
So, how if someone out there, if this is news to one of our viewers, how should they get in touch with you?
Two ways: sue at IAB.com, nice and easy, or research at IAB.com if you forget my name. And I will be more than happy to interact with you, and we'll put you in touch with those of us who are putting this list together. And we can even ask you if you'd like to be on the committee to help that.
All right, that's thank you. Actionable and useful as the whole conversation has been. Sue Hogan, thank you so much for joining us once again on IAB There. We'll look forward to welcoming you back very, very soon. We have two more
Thanks,
of the
Brad.
impact studies scheduled for this year. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
See you soon. Allow me to remind you, as you're seeing it on the screen right now, that the new fronts begin May 3rd. They go through May 6th. The following week is the podcast upfronts. Not only will the new fronts be an exciting palette of the content that is coming with digital video that is ad supported, we also will have a video ad spend report that will be released there, which will extend and complicate some of these numbers in very interesting and positive ways. Thank you for tuning in to IAB There today. IAB There is a production of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Our show today was produced by Connor Healy, Joe Pilla, and Loretta Bain. I'm Brad Behrens, Editor-in-Chief here at the IAB. Thank you so much for joining us. Come back again, and we'll look forward to seeing you here at the New Fronts and beyond. Bye-bye, everybody.